Adaeze's phone rang at 2:47 a.m. The call that shatters worlds, the call that divides life into before and after. Your sister, there's been an accident, you need to come to the hospital. Now. She arrived to find Obinna in the waiting room, his shirt covered in blood, Nneoma's blood, his hands shaking uncontrollably. What happened? Adaeze grabbed his shoulders. We were driving home from the church vigil. A truck ran a red light, it hit her side. I tried to get her out. A doctor emerged, his face said everything. I'm sorry, we did everything we could, she didn't make it. Obinna collapsed, not gracefully, not quietly. He fell to his knees and released a sound Adaeze would never forget, a primal, guttural wail of a man whose entire world had just been ripped away. Nneoma was dead, 28 years old, married 3 years, 7 months pregnant with their first child. Both gone in an instant. The funeral was on a Saturday. Over 1,000 people came. Nneoma had been beloved. Obinna could barely stand. His brothers held him up as the casket was lowered. But it was what happened after the burial that would haunt them all. Back at the house, Obinna's uncle, Elder Okoro, gathered the family. We need to discuss the tradition, he announced. Adaeze's mother stiffened. What tradition? Levirate marriage, it's biblical, Deuteronomy 25. When a man dies without a male heir, his brother marries the widow to carry on his name. Nneoma died childless. Obinna needs an heir. Someone from her family must. Nneoma just died today, Adaeze's mother shouted, and you're already planning to replace her. It's not replacement, it's preservation, it's covenant, it's scripture. Obinna stood abruptly. Get out. Brother Obinna, the elders have discussed. I said get out, his voice cracked. My wife is in the ground, my child is dead, and you're talking about replacement. Get out of my house. The room cleared quickly, but Elder Okoro's words hung in the air like a curse. Levirate marriage, biblical tradition, covenant preservation. And everyone in the room knew exactly who he was suggesting. Adaeze, the younger sister, the unmarried one. 3 months after Nneoma's death, a prophet visited their church, Prophet Adaeze. Known for accurate words, he'd never been to their congregation before. Midway through service, he stopped preaching. There's someone here, a woman, you lost your sister recently, suddenly, tragically. Adaeze's blood ran cold. Every eye in the sanctuary turned to her. Stand up, the prophet said. She stood, trembling. God says your grief is not just for your sister, it's for a future you thought you lost when she died. But God says, and I know this sounds strange, he's about to give you what she had, not to replace her, but to fulfill something that was written before either of you were born. The church went silent. God says, Ruth, study Ruth. What looks like scandal to man is strategy to God. What looks like replacement is actually redemption. You're going to marry him. The gasp that went through the church was audible. Marry him, marry WHO. The prophet hadn't said a name, but everyone knew. Obinna, her dead sister's husband. Adaeze ran out of the church and didn't stop running until she was locked in her car, hyperventilating. This was insane, prophetic words gone wrong, a scandal waiting to happen. She would never marry Obinna. That was her sister's husband, her dead sister's husband. Never. A week later, Obinna showed up at Adaeze's apartment. She hadn't seen him since the funeral. He looked different, thinner, older, haunted. Can we talk? She let him in, heart pounding. I heard about the prophecy, he said, sitting on her couch. The whole church is talking about it. It's ridiculous, Adaeze said quickly. Prophet was obviously mistaken. We're not, that would be insane. Would it? She stared at him. What? Adaeze, I've been meeting with the elders, studying scripture, praying, and I keep coming back to the same passages. Ruth and Boaz, Levirate marriage, the kinsman redeemer, God's design for preserving family lines when tragedy strikes. Obinna, that's Old Testament. So is the 10 Commandments, so is tithing, so is Sabbath. We can't pick and choose what's relevant. You can't be serious. I'm not saying I want this, I'm saying God might be saying it, and if he is, who are we to argue? Adaeze stood up, backing away. This is grief talking, you're not thinking clearly. You loved Nneoma, you can't just. I loved your sister more than life itself, Obinna's voice broke. Losing her destroyed me. I'm not trying to replace her, but I'm also not trying to ignore what God might be doing in the wreckage. And what is he doing? Making me my sister's replacement, making you move on by recycling family members. Or maybe, Obinna said quietly, he's preserving covenant, preserving her legacy, preserving what the enemy tried to destroy. Adaeze felt tears streaming down her face. I can't do this, I won't. Then pray about it, don't pray about what people will say, don't pray about how it looks, pray about what God is saying, because that's all that matters. He left and Adaeze fell to her knees. God, this is madness, please tell me this is not you, please. But the silence that followed felt less like absence and more like answer. For weeks, Adaeze tried to ignore it, tried to pray it away, tried to convince herself the prophet was wrong and Obinna was traumatized. But everywhere she turned, she saw Ruth. Her Bible reading plan randomly landed on Ruth. The sermon at church was on Ruth. Her devotional app featured Ruth. She finally sat down and read the entire book in one sitting. Ruth, the Moabite widow. Nneoma, the grieving mother-in-law who'd lost everything. Boaz, the kinsman redeemer who married the foreign widow to preserve the family line. And the scandal it must have caused. Ruth, marrying within the family of her dead husband, people must have talked, must have judged, must have whispered about impropriety. But God called it redemption. And from that scandalous union came Obed, from Obed came Jesse, from Jesse came David, from David's line came Jesus. Oh God, Adaeze whispered, you're serious, aren't you? The response in her spirit was clear, I've always been serious. The question is, are you brave enough to obey when obedience looks like scandal? When Adaeze finally told her mother she was considering it, the reaction was nuclear. Absolutely not. Mama, just listen. Listen to what? That you're going to marry your dead sister's husband, that you're going to sleep in her bed, wear her ring, take her place. It's not about replacing her. Then what is it about, Adaeze? Love, you're in love with Obinna. The question stopped her cold. Was she, or was this just obedience? I don't know what this is, Mama. I just know that every time I pray about it, God shows me Ruth. Every prophet who's prayed over me says the same thing. Every elder who's studied scripture says it's biblical. And Obinna. Obinna is grieving, he's confused, he's not thinking clearly. Obinna has been studying Levirate marriage for months. He's met with scholars, with rabbis, with theologians. Mama, this isn't just grief, this is biblical precedent. Her mother sat down, face in her hands. What will people say? I don't know, but when did we start caring more about people's opinions than God's direction? You'll be crucified, the church will destroy you, they'll call you desperate, opportunistic, sick. Maybe, or maybe they'll see what God is doing. Maybe our obedience will open a door that's been closed. Maybe Nneoma's death wasn't the end of the story. Maybe it was the beginning of something we can't see yet. Her mother looked up, tears streaming. Are you sure? Because once you do this, there's no going back. I'm not sure of anything, except that God keeps saying yes when I keep asking no, and I'm tired of fighting him. They announced their engagement 6 months after the prophecy, 8 months after Nneoma's death. The backlash was immediate and vicious. She was waiting for her sister to die. This is sick and twisted. Obinna is dishonoring Nneoma's memory. This is not biblical, it's perverted. Half the church left, family members stopped speaking to them, social media exploded with condemnation. But a smaller group rallied around them, theologians who studied Levirate marriage, pastors who understood covenant, people who'd actually read Ruth and recognized the pattern. The wedding was small, intimate, controversial. Pastor Emeka, one of the few who supported them, officiated. What we're witnessing today will make some uncomfortable, he said in his message, because it challenges our Western ideas of romance and propriety. But let's be clear, this is not a love story that started with butterflies. This is a covenant story that started with obedience. Obinna is not replacing Nneoma. He's honoring her by preserving what she built. Adaeze is not stealing her sister's life. She's stepping into a role that scripture permits and God ordained. And yes, people will talk. They talked about Ruth too. They talked about Tamar. They talked about Rahab. But all 3 women are in the genealogy of Jesus. Why? Because God uses scandalous obedience to accomplish his purposes. When Obinna said his vows, he did something unexpected. Adaeze, I need to say something publicly. I loved Nneoma. I will always love Nneoma. Her death didn't end that love, but God has asked me to expand my heart, not replace it. To honor what was by building what will be. I'm not marrying you to forget her. I'm marrying you to remember her, by preserving the covenant she and I started. And I promise before God and these witnesses to love you with the same covenant faithfulness I gave her. Adaeze's vows were just as powerful. I'm not my sister, I will never be my sister, and I'm not trying to be, but I am her sister, which means I carry her DNA, her legacy, her faith. And if God is asking me to continue what she started, I'll do it, not out of obligation, but out of obedience. Obinna, I enter this covenant with my eyes open. This isn't a fairy tale, this is a mystery, and I'm willing to walk into it because God said so. A year into the marriage, Adaeze got pregnant. The pregnancy was unexpected. The doctors had said it was unlikely. Complications from stress and grief had affected her fertility. But at 8 weeks, the ultrasound showed something impossible. Twins, a boy and a girl. When Adaeze told Obinna, he wept, not sad tears, healing tears. Nneoma always wanted twins, he whispered. She used to pray for them, a boy and a girl. She'd even picked out names. What names? Adaeze asked. Chimamanda, my God will never fail, and Chukwuebuka, God is the greatest. Adaeze felt the weight of it. These weren't random names. They were prophetic declarations over children that would exist because of scandal that turned into obedience. When the twins were born healthy, the church that had condemned them fell silent. Even the harshest critics couldn't deny it. God was in this. 5 years after their wedding, Adaeze and Obinna were invited to speak at a conference on unconventional families in Scripture. Adaeze stood on the stage, twins now 4 years old, sitting in the front row. I married my dead sister's husband, she began, and I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too. It's weird, it's inappropriate, it's scandalous, it's wrong. But here's what I learned. God's ways are not our ways, His thoughts are not our thoughts, and sometimes what looks like scandal to us is strategy to Him. She shared their story, the prophecy, the scripture, the backlash, the obedience. People ask me if I struggled with guilt. Absolutely. People ask if it felt like replacing my sister, every single day. People ask if I love Obinna the way Nneoma did. I don't know, because my love story with him didn't start with romance, it started with assignment. But here's what I know. These 2 children exist because I said yes when everything in me wanted to say no. This family exists because Obinna was brave enough to follow scripture instead of culture. This testimony exists because God's plan was bigger than our comfort. The room was silent. I'm not telling you to marry your sibling's spouse. I'm telling you that sometimes God asks us to do things that make absolutely no sense to anyone but Him, and our obedience to His voice matters more than other people's opinions. After her talk, a young woman approached, crying. My fiancé died 3 months ago. His family has been pressuring me to marry his brother. They're from a culture where it's expected, but I've been resisting because it feels wrong. Your story, I think God is telling me to reconsider. Adaeze took her hands. Don't do it because of my story. Do it because God told you. Pray, fast, seek counsel, and if God says yes, obey, no matter how scandalous it looks. 10 years after Nneoma's death, Adaeze stood at her grave with the twins. This is your Aunt Nneoma, she told them. She was brave, beautiful, and loved God with everything, and because of her you exist. Chimamanda, now 9, asked the question Adaeze had been dreading. Mama, why did you marry Daddy if he was married to Aunt Nneoma? Adaeze knelt down. Because God asked me to, and when God asks you to do something hard, something that doesn't make sense, something that people will criticize, you obey anyway, because His plan is always better than our understanding. Chukwuebuka, the thoughtful one, added, like Ruth and Boaz. Adaeze smiled through tears, exactly like Ruth and Boaz. That night, she wrote in her journal, I married my dead sister's husband. The world called it scandal. God called it obedience. And from that obedience came life, legacy, and a testimony that will outlive us all. A word for the viewers. This story is not permission to pursue inappropriate relationships. It's a testimony that God sometimes asks His people to walk paths that defy cultural norms but align with biblical precedent. Levirate marriage is found in Deuteronomy 25, 5-10, practiced by Tamar, Genesis 38, and beautifully displayed in Ruth's story. If you're in a similar situation, seek extensive godly counsel, study scripture thoroughly, and ensure you're hearing God's voice, not justifying your desires. Scripture references. If brothers dwell together, and one of them dies and has no son, the wife of the dead man shall not be married outside the family to a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go into her and take her as his wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother to her. Deuteronomy 25:5. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go I will go, and where you lodge I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Ruth 1:16. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. Isaiah 55:8. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. Proverbs 3:5.